On this show, we feature Harmony Woodington. You might remember me from my TV shows in the 1980s and 90s. And now I host a show featuring some of the most inspiring and inspirational people. Welcome to Magical People. Founded by Harmony Woodington, Awakened Body uses outside-of-the-box thinking to support its clients in creating a life in service of themselves. Using a combination of hypnotherapy and other healing modalities, Harmony works with clients one-on-one, teaching them about the connection between behavior and the brain and demonstrating how to connect with their subconscious minds to own their power, live their life's purpose, and release habits and emotions which do not support their goals. She works with healthcare providers and specialists to research and adapt her program to ensure that each client's needs are met, that they experience successful treatment outcomes. Harmony is passionate about helping others to achieve optimal health and well-being and has researched and combined information from different modalities to develop accomplishments. All of that. It's so important to be able to shift. And I'm so glad that someone like yourself, I used to do that. I'm retired from all that. I kind of miss it a little bit, though, to tell you the truth, helping people to help themselves. But I'm so thankful there are folks like you that can help people, that can coach people, that can kind of take them by the hand and help them cross the street a little bit. And that, or we can liken that to riding a bike and having those safety wheels. I forget what they're called, those two extra wheels on the
Training
back.
wheels.
Training wheels, if you will. And then the training wheels are off and they're kind of going on their own power. So it's so exciting and so important. I'm not just saying that to be nice. I think you know me well enough by now, and the folks out there know me. It's so crucial what you do. It's so important for us to, I'm going to use a term that Dr. Masters used to use. Dr. Masters was the founder and principal of the University of Metaphysics and the University of Sedona, to clean up the dustbin, the garbage bin of our minds, because we accumulate stuff on so many levels of our mind. And it's so important to have a guide, if you will, such as yourself, to help them through that and to help them realize, hey, wait a second. I do feel good about myself. And I agree 1,000% when you said about self-esteem. I found that to be the major root cause of so many issues. If we're not feeling good about ourselves, or we're, we don't think we're worthy, self-worth was another thing that was a big issue for many clients, then it's going to hinder them. It's going to prevent them from going the whole 9 yards, if you will, because deep down they feel, well, they don't deserve success. They're not worthy. So again, there's other symptoms, there's other things involved with that. And I'm so glad that you exist physically in this world to offer the services that you do.
The other thing that's really important to understand when it comes to anxiety as well is one of the major catalysts that creates anxiety is something new.
Yes.
Right? When you are about to experience or do something new, anxiety will show up because the subconscious mind doesn't have any parameters to navigate it. And we have these weak, frail human bodies that can be destroyed in so many ways. Let's be real. Like, why aren't we all spiked armadillos? Like, I don't understand. Like, we're so frail, right? And so, of course, the subconscious mind wanting to keep us safe because it's experienced good and bad, and an unknown could relate to one of those bads. So it creates the anxiety to try to slow you down so you'll think about moving forward, or maybe not. Maybe just don't. That's a good idea, right? And so it's up to us to decide how we want to perceive the anxiety or fear and what we're going to do with it. And if we understand that it's showing up because we are about to venture into the unknown, and we know the thing we're going to do really doesn't have any physical danger, there isn't a lion on the other side of the door, then we can go, okay, I see that you're showing up because there's an unknown. However, it just means I'm about to grow, right? I'm just about to expand. It is a witness to show you you are just about to grow because you're going to do something new. So if it's safe and you know that it's safe, then the only thing you should be saying is, Marcus, go, right? See
Very
the
good.
anxiety, see the fear, and utilize it to fuel you. And performers do this all the time. I did this when I was belly dancing because I belly danced for more than a decade and I was on stage a lot. And I would use that emotion and I would transmute it into energy to fuel my performance because I knew the fear that I was feeling was because I was about to step onto a stage I hadn't been before. I was about to step in front of a bunch of people who hadn't seen me before. Are they going to love me? Are they going to reject me? I have no idea. Well, guess what? I don't care. Now I'm excited. Go. So when you learn how to assess the situation and transmute that energy to know I'm not in danger, but it's because I'm going to do something new. I'm about to grow. You can get excited about the growth instead of being fearful or having anxiety about the potential danger.
Absolutely. I find that if we have no reference points, then how do we deal with them, right? Just as you said. It's also very crucial, you brought this up a little bit earlier, to ask ourselves questions. What are we meant to become out of this situation? How can we grow out of this situation? Or how can we benefit? There's a number of questions in New Thought metaphysics one can ask themselves. And it's absolutely true. It's so empowering when we go into inquisitive mode. It takes us away, if you will, from fear mode. It brings us back more to the intellect, but hopefully it becomes very constructive because the intellect can stay very with questions, so to speak. It's like, what am I supposed to learn from this? Don't open the door if you know there's a lion behind it, duh. And if you do happen to open the door, oh, there's Mr. Lion or Mrs. Lion or whatever. And it's like, okay, how can I grow from this? And I know it's very, very hard if you're in what some people might call a critical situation or one perhaps theoretically involving danger, but it is perspective as well. What if you decide you want to make friends with the lion? What if you love animals so much? The animal begins to trust you. You can pet each other. You can love each other. So, what may be perceived, and I think you brought this up earlier, as something negative, no, it's something positive. Scotty is very, very good at that, for sure. And we really need people like that in our lives to kind of balance ourselves off. I knew someone who was so like that. She pissed me off, and it was just like, okay, well, really, it's true. It's like, okay, there's a guy with a gun in front of us about to rob us. And she's justifying, because she was a social worker, she's justifying, oh, well, he must have had a really bad upbringing and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, for God's sake, let's give. Let's give him our wallet. Let's not justify his behavior through analytical thinking or whatever. So it's really important to get something out of a situation that can help you to grow. And having that attitude, I'm very excited that you brought that up, is everything. It's so important. um Anxiety, I did bring this up to you before we came to air. And how does one deal with anxiety when they don't really theoretically have a point in the past that could have triggered that anxiety? So, in other words, let's say they had, this is going to sound familiar, I know. Let's say they had wonderful situations over the years, and now at this point in their life, and they're a little bit older, it makes them feel anxious to go into that situation again. And I've looked at that. I've had clients like that as well. Where does one explore? Does one go into their childhood? Does one go into other causal factors, if you will? How do you feel about this?
I was chatting with a client the other day about this, and she was actually like really holding back at the idea of going and talking to a therapist or a practitioner because she was dealing with anxiety and didn't know what to attach it to. She didn't know what to tell them. And she was relying on herself, her conscious mind, to somehow access the information. And if she wasn't able to do so, well, then there was no point in talking to a therapist. Now, I understand when you're talking to an allopathic practitioner, they more deal with the cognitive mind. And so there is a lot more trying to source things from a logical standpoint. But I want you to think about what you had for dinner last Tuesday. No, you can't think of it? Yeah, exactly. Do you see what I mean? I don't even remember what I had for, I don't know. I have no
I
idea.
remember last night. I don't know. This
Yeah,
morning.
because I get chef's plate and it's different every night. So you want me to figure that out? I don't know. Can you see how limited the conscious mind is?
Oh,
Okay. The
totally.
amount of information that the conscious mind is able to retain is just sad and tragic, and also perfect the way that it is. Because when you go to sleep, it mind dumps every night so that it's fresh to receive new information every day. So it's meant to be short term. It's designed that way for a reason. The subconscious mind houses the history of your whole soul's existence. No big deal, right? Now, we can look at this life and the history of this life, but we can also look at the history of the whole soul, and that goes a lot further. So that information is phenomenal. And then at the same time, it also has the capability to change the molecular structure of the things that we put in this hole and turn it into organs and skin and hair and nails. And so the power of the subconscious mind, if we were to take what it's doing to keep this body alive right now and to bring it to the conscious mind, I'd be dead in a millisecond. I wouldn't even know how to begin to control this beautiful body I'm so grateful for, right?
Totally.
So that is what we want to tap into to be able to figure out what it is that's going on. We don't talk to the conscious mind to get the answers. It doesn't have it. Okay. However, there's two things, right? All of the information is in the subconscious mind. Two, it has coping mechanisms. When there's an experience that is extreme enough that it's going to affect your ability to function, it buries it somewhere safe where it's not going to create an issue. This is just a natural survival mechanism. So if it is something that was actually like so detrimental that it was going to affect your capability to function, it's going to be stored somewhere that you do not have access to it easily. Doesn't mean you don't, and it doesn't mean we can't go there. Now, I want you to also understand that I'm not here to unlock what's in there and make you revisit it and hang out with some monster in the closet that maybe you don't want to go back and visit because you don't remember, and maybe you're not supposed to remember what it is, right? This is
Totally.
why a lot of people don't do therapy. So I am not here to bring back trauma that you have to revisit. What I am concerned about is the residual from the issue that you had that you are now living with, that's incongruent, that's not working, that needs to be updated. Okay. So we will go back and talk to the subconscious mind and figure out what it is. We won't bathe in it. We're not going to relive it. It's all going to be okay. But we're going to figure out what it is. And then we're going to figure out the residual that's attached to it. And we are going to release and update all of it. We're going to clear the energy. We're going to update the mental operating system. And we are going to reframe, because you can't release a program without replacing it with something new. So once we figure out what that is, we can rewire or essentially change the neural pathways. So you make sure this one dies out and doesn't get fed anymore, and you create a new one and feed that. And then you can move on and you can create whatever it is that you have in that beautiful agenda, that you want to create in your life. And it doesn't have to be the visiting the monster in the closet.
So exciting. And funny you brought that up. When I first moved out here almost 30 years ago, 29 years ago or so, a lot of therapists used a technique where they make their client, or they assist their client in reliving trauma. And I remember when people would come to see me, they'd actually say to me, "You're not going to re-traumatize me, are you?" They didn't use those words. You're
Yeah.
not going to make me go through all of this again. And it's like, I'm thinking, where's this coming from? So I did more research and I realized at the time, almost 30 years ago, that was kind of a popular technique, a popular tool in many clinical hypnotherapists and other practitioners' belts. And I thought, well, why would I want to do that when there's so many other ways to do it? You know,
Mm.
such as what you were just talking about. It is not necessary, and that's why people shouldn't fear. People shouldn't have fear anyway. But that's a whole other topic that we can chat forever about. Why should they fear going to a guide, if you will, someone who can guide you through your life, your conscious life, your unconscious well-being, and fix things, if you will, because it's like a rebirth. And I think a popular tool I think was called rebirthing. That was a long time ago. That was almost 30 years ago, where they pretend they're in the womb and the practitioner guides them through this and they're reborn and all of this. It sounded to me a little bit woo woo and not necessary. It could have been handled a little bit differently as a clinical hypnotherapist. You're, I'm sure, aware of that
Yeah.
they can just sit there and meditate or go into self-hypnosis state and be guided through that instead of like going in with blankets and doing all this woo-woo stuff, so to speak. um, I want your opinion about this. Speak about woo-woo. I was introduced years ago, and I'm going to be honest with the folks out there. I think you pretty much know my background is I got into being a clinical hypnotherapist and certification and all of that and much more after, so I can help people to help themselves. Very much what we're talking about. So they're all lined up for past life regression. And I thought, oh, but I didn't, I guess that's what I meant to do because they're all lined up for this sort of thing. But then I discovered through the place I was working at, and I was working at Reflections Books for about 8 years in Coquitlam Mountain, BC here.
Yep.
And, and I was introduced to Dr. Michael Newton's book, at least one of them, called Life Between Lives. And that changed everything for me. It helped me to help my clients because it took them, it seemed to be 2 hours, and I always recorded these things. And back in the day, it was CDs, or sorry, DVDs or CDs that they went away with. Now it would be maybe a little memory thing or something that they would walk away with. And they would go through 2 hours of um, self-discovery or rediscovering themselves, because I believe subconsciously we know really who we are and so much more. It's like this wellspring, like a book opening, so to speak. Do we still have books out there? I don't know. This great big book opening, and kind of like that show Reading Rainbow. Reading Rainbow, yes, there was life for LeVar Burton before Star Trek Next Generation. In any case, this whole wellspring of information. And with Life Between Lives, you're essentially guiding them to the death scene of the last lifetime and gently guiding them to the decision-making process of why they came into this lifetime. Now, that might sound kind of odd for some people. It might resonate for other people. But for me, it resonated rather than doing just straight past life regression and have them experience, oh, life in the old west and this and that. And I found that more entertainment. But with Life Between Lives, wow, that's something you could sink your teeth into. The client would go away knowing theoretically why they chose this lifetime to reincarnate into. That brings up a lot of questions whether people believe in reincarnation and all of that. But we won't discuss that, or maybe in the future we will. But it was so therapeutic. So Life Between Lives, Dr. Michael Newton, was an incredible tool for myself. He teaches you in this book as a hypnotherapist um, how to go through the stages with them, and not necessarily the how to hypnotize them or go into inductions and all that sort of thing. But it's so enriching, and at least they knew theoretically why they're here, and it was always empowering. So I guess it doesn't matter as long as the end result is self-empowerment or feeling like they have a purpose now, which as well raises their self-esteem to a great degree. Did you want to chat about that, or am I just blabbering on?
No, you're absolutely not. It's a part of my program. Um, for the last decade, I've been taking, it's one of the few hypnosis sessions that I do. I don't do a lot of hypnosis, mainly because I came to the resolution that when it comes to clearing and accessing information in general, you can communicate with the subconscious mind without hypnosis, and it's significantly faster. You can update the mental operating system without hypnosis, and you can put the power in your client's hands to do that, and you don't need hypnosis. And a lot of the time, hypnosis is used, in my mind, unethically, because the practitioner is helping to change the client's mind, but they have no idea what's going on because they're in a state of hypnosis, and at no point are they able to update their own mental operating system, or do they know how it works. So 99.9% of my program has hypnotherapy techniques that give my clients the power and teach them to create a harmonious relationship with the conscious and the subconscious mind. And I teach them how to do the work to update their mental operating system. So when they graduate from working with me, they have a beautiful relationship with their own mind, and they're able to do the work without me. That is my goal. However, utilizing hypnosis to access information, like why you came down into this life, or to reconcile your relationship with your heart, because when we have our heart wounded, the first time, we generally tend to create some type of a barrier around the heart. I call it a heart wall. And what ends up happening is we actually are disabled from being able to access our own love, let alone effectively love others. And it's important to actually reconcile with the pain that you've experienced to release that heart wall, to be unconditionally loving to yourself and to others. And I've done the work for myself, and I've done the work with all of my clients. And I'm telling you, it is next level the way that you can exist in the world and the beautiful relationships that you can create when you have released your heart wall and reconciled that pain. I am unconditional love in all things and in all times and in all places. And it's because of the work that I've done and supporting the releasing of my heart wall. So now, if we go back to then looking at deciding or coming to the resolution around why it is that you're in this life, again, I did that work for myself with a practitioner as well. And I saw myself signing a contract that I created for myself. It wasn't created by some dude in the sky. Okay. I created a contract for myself to be love on this earth and to flood the earth with love. Now, when I came out of that, I was like, are you what? What? How? That no big deal. I got this. What? How am I supposed to flood the earth with love? Like, I'm one person. I had no idea how to map that out. Right. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to communicate some more on this. I'll meditate. And then I got, you need to meditate every day for 5 minutes and pull love and become the vibration of love. And I was like, what? I don't know how to, okay, sure. And then I started doing it. And then my friend, who's a little bit older than me, he goes, your vibration's gone up. Like, you're sitting at around a 400. What are you doing? And I was like, what? What 400? He's like, Dr. David R. Hawkins, map of consciousness. And I was like, somebody quant. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, he's like, there's a book. And I'm like, you're kidding me. He's like, power versus force. And I was like, somebody did the work and quantified how we buy. Oh my God, I'm so excited. So I bought the book, and it became the foundation of the work that I do. I just fell in love. So it was like so amazing that I walked this path to discover what my purpose was, and then realized that there was somebody that had gone and done the work to quantify and to support this, that supported my path. It was just like, oh my gosh, right? And then in 10 years of doing this work, here's what I realized. I'm not going to do it on my own. So weird, right? Like, I was taking all of the weight and putting it on my shoulders, thinking, oh, yeah, like, hello, ego. I'm not going to do it myself. It's actually through the butterfly effect that I've been doing so, because each client that I work with, that I teach to own their power, to unapologetically step into the brilliance that they are, to unconditionally love themselves, they become a lighthouse. And they shine the light for others and give permission to others to do the same. right? So it's happening through the butterfly effect. So with clients that I work with, what I do is exactly the same thing because I became curious and I was like, well, if I created a contract for myself and I decided what I was going to do with this life, I wonder if others did that. Like, I wonder if it's a thing. Curiosity motivates a lot of what I do. Isn't that, I think you guys are the same, right?
Oh,
So
totally.
I started taking people in hypnosis to go back to before they were born. And I always take them back and I stop them at certain pivotal moments in their life, like when they graduated high school, when they're 17. I'm like, so how are you feeling right now? What's going on in your brain? And they're like, I'm really horny. Duh. Yeah. 17. I get it. Right. Or I'll stop them to visit what it was like when they were like a year old, when they were a little baby. Right. And they feel what it was like to be that in that beautiful, helpless, innocent space. And then in the womb, they visit the womb and they sit in that space and feel the energy and realize how much awareness they actually had in that space in their life because they've completely forgotten it. And then they go back to before they were born. And then I'm like, okay, find that moment when you decided why you were going to come down here. And lo and behold, every single one of them chose it for themselves. And there's a different scenario every time. You know, some of them are surrounded by like hosts of heaven and angels and all sorts of people cheering them on. And it's like this golden contract. And it's just like this big epic hoorah. And some people not so much. But I mean, either way, every single one of them, they see that they chose their life, they chose their challenges, they chose their families, and they all wanted to do this thing. And when they come out of the state of hypnosis and they're like, OMG, I know why I'm here. You're right. It changes everything. It changes. That is the thing that now motivates them in this life. It's not money. It's not success. It's not external approval. It's the thing now. That's what wakes them up every day. And that has been me since I discovered that for the last 10 years. So it's pivotal and powerful. I am so in alignment with you on that.
So exciting. It's such exciting work, and it's so satisfying as well, because we're growing almost at the same time as our various clients,
Oh,
or
hell yeah.
right? It's
We
so
get to
exciting.
quantum leap. Are you kidding me? Because we're in the work all the time. So we're just
Totally.
steeping in it. We're quantum leaping.
Totally. I want to emphasize as well, without getting too woo-woo, about the value, the importance of meditation. Some people call it self-hypnosis, some people call it meditation. It depends on your belief system, if you will. Where I'm coming from is thousands-year-old traditions, either Buddhism or whatever, Hinduism. And it's been proven to me personally, as well as with my clients, and this is speaking to what you said a little bit earlier, about how their energy, their vibration rises simply by meditating. And how many times have you heard? I don't, if I had a dime or a nickel or whatever it is nowadays, for every time I heard someone say, I can't meditate. And those are just the men, let alone the females. And it's like, of course you can meditate when you're driving. When you're driving, that's a form of self-hypnosis, and you pass by where you were supposed to end up, you were actually meditating or hypnotized to a certain degree. So it's repetition, even just sitting with your eyes closed and focusing on your breathing for a minute. And I've always given my students and clients and patients a little bit of short-term goals so they're not overwhelmed, to not expect to be able to sit and meditate for 20 minutes or an hour, a minute. And they found, if they're sitting with the goal of just focusing on their breath for a minute and looking up into their third eye or this area, which has a tendency medically to induce some kind of hypnotic state as well. It's not
Yeah.
just a
I get
spiritual.
them to visualize a little jewel on their third eye.
Very cool. Very, very cool. And so, they often found, with the goal of sitting down for a minute or two, they've actually sat for 5 or 10 minutes without realizing it. So they're feeling good about themselves that they've accomplished that. But there's something about meditation, I won't get into the spiritual aspect here at this time, that tends to raise their vibration. And I believe that's because of my belief systems. We become one with the higher power, the thing that created us. You can call it love, you can call it whatever, creativity. I like to call it creativity, or the creator, that life force, that is animating me and you and everybody right now. And the greater mind, if you will, what exists in my mind also exists in your mind, and we exist in the great mind of the universe, if you will. But now I'm going on about that. So we're tapping in, if you will, to a higher power, just with the intention of sitting and being quiet and feeling peace. And that in itself can be very, very therapeutic. Add other things to that while you're in slightly altered state, and you can create so much healing and peace.
What's really interesting about the concept of meditation is that a lot of people generally tend to think of it as something that's more spiritual, ethereal, existential. And in all reality, what you're actually learning how to do is tap into the power of your own mind, right? A lot of very, very successful business people actually understand that the answers that they seek are in their own mind. And so they learn how to actually ask a question and be with their own mind, because they know that the universe, God, what source, whatever, or their own brilliant subconscious mind, the answer will come to them, right? And it's really funny because over the last decade, I've just always naturally attracted professionals and entrepreneurs in the work that I do. And it took me a hot minute to own it and start calling myself an executive coach, but it was something that I eventually started to own. And so all of my languaging now is completely transformed. I used to be a lot more spiritual the way that I talk, but now it's a lot more business and corporate. And so, what I teach now with my clients is actually teaching them how to tap into the power of their own mind so that they can set themselves apart and really be at the cutting edge of things when it comes to business, because there are so many different factors that are at play. And anybody that is a powerful leader and, sets himself ahead understands that there's energy involved. Everybody knows. I think a lot of people have heard it, of putting yourself in a power pose, right?
Yes,
What does
yes,
that do but shift your energy, right? Listening to particular music, listening to particular motivational things like on YouTube or whatever. So if you think about meditation as something that you're actually doing to learn how to still the mind, to learn how to listen to the mind, to learn how to tap into your own brilliance, to learn how to access different areas of the mind. Sometimes, actually, Disney is one of the most powerful examples of compartmentalizing and honoring how important the process of creativity is and how it all has to be separated. Because when he was creating the idea for a movie or something like that, he would bring all the creatives into the room, and there were no like accountants or the strategic, like any of the logical people were not allowed in the room. Right. And so they'd go nuts with the brainstorming, and money wasn't a factor. They weren't thinking about it. They were just brainstorming crazy ideas. And then once they came to a conclusion on something, then the accountants would go in and go, okay, now we need to figure out how to logistically make this happen from a financial standpoint. Right. And so it was all done separately. Now, what if you treated your mind that way? What if you knew, because you had been practicing, how to tap into the different aspects of your mind? So when you were problem solving or you were creating something new, you go, okay, I need to talk to the creative side of my mind right now. Now I need to talk to my intuitive side because I want to have a chat with the universe. Okay, now I need to tap into the logical side. Now I need to tap into the math side. Now, you know what I mean? So
totally.
meditation has many different purposes. But really, in all reality, if you look, most of the people that are walking around on this planet do not have a relationship with their mind. They don't. And if you want to become a superpower, meditation is the way to do it, because it is helping you to learn how to tap into your mind, how to compartmentalize, how to access the different certain scenarios, how to separate. When you learn how to work with your mind and you learn how to still the mind, if you start feeling anxiety, depression, if you start getting really stressed out, you know how to slow that down and back off, because you've learned how to still the mind. So now you can separate and go to logic and go, am I stressed right now? What's going on? Is this a real danger? No. Okay, cool. And you can go to logic. So meditation is, yes, I understand from where we're accessing it in current history, we're thinking about like Indian meditation, that kind of thing, yoga, blah, 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 blah. But as you said earlier, it has actually been present throughout all of human history. Oracles were actually a meditative like woman who they would use all sorts of essences and stuff like that, and they would put themselves into a trance to access universal truth to then guide the king to whatever it was that he was supposed to do, right?
Totally.
It's been going for a long, long, long time. So whether you are a spiritual person or not, you can use it to access the unseen and the unknown and knowledge and wisdom that has been around since before the written word. And you can access it to be able to become a powerhouse in the business world.
Totally. I want to run with that, Harmony, and you've probably thought about this either consciously or not. Um, the mastermind technique, which is in a very, very famous book, not until the last chapter, to grow rich or think rich and grow rich, or I forget the name. It's an awesome book. Um, and the technique is you go into meditation or self-hypnosis, and you have a problem to solve or something you want to accomplish, and you bring into your unconscious mind supposedly people who are experts at those things, living or dead. And
Mm,
for example, maybe you're bringing in Abraham Lincoln, maybe you're bringing in the Wright brothers, they're joining in this meeting in your mind. So you're in hypnotic state. You're bringing in the Wright brothers. You're bringing in Abraham Lincoln for another purpose relating to all of this, and so on and so forth. And you've got about 6 experts, so to speak, at your fingertips, or if you will, in your mind. And it's worked for many successful people, and they've kind of all gone into discussion. It sounds like madness, but it's quite fun,
no.
you know and it's exciting because anybody can do this. They can
Yes.
access people who have walked the earth, who are very wise on so many levels, either spiritually or in business or whatever. And you just excited me, you talking about this, and it kind of segued into this. And it's not a technique I've used. I've played with it a little bit just to see if I can do it. Of course I can, because I'm nuts. But it's great fun and very, very useful, as well. Have you played with that? Did you want to chat about
Audrey
that?
Hepburn and Davy Bowie are my spirit animals. Darn
Uh,
right. Absolutely. I mean, you can utilize it to call upon, amazing people who had an impact in this life that can guide and support you. And I think if you look at those two people, they made a massive impact on this planet, right? They're legends. David Bowie is my black star. Absolutely love that man. And Audrey Hepburn actually sits right beside me. There's a portrait of her on the wall. Like she's my idol. Um, you can also utilize this actually if you're in conflict or you're at an impasse with a person. And it's actually a particular method that I work with clients. What I do is actually get them to visualize a room with a desk or a table and a couple of chairs. And they go in and they invite the person they're in conflict with, right? And they ask them, so what's going on? And the other person is going to tell you a story of disempowerment, not being seen, not being validated, feeling, whatever it is that they're feeling. And it's really interesting because there's one in particular, she was having an issue, she was trying to get money, like inheritance, and the family was in Iran. So they weren't here, they weren't there or here. She was here, they were in Iran. And the aunt was withholding the inheritance money and she just couldn't get her to cough it up. And she was so frustrated, right? But when she went into this particular state and she called her aunt to the table and she said, how are you doing? What's going on? And she started talking about how nobody cared about her and she did all this stuff and nobody validated her and saw her. Nobody loved her. Nobody saw her effort, blah, 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 blah. You could see that this money that she was controlling was getting her all sorts of attention. and she wasn't getting attention or validation in general. So she wanted to keep the attention on her for as long as possible. So, of course, she's not going to give up the money. It's getting her what she wants. So, what did she do coming away from that conversation in her mind with her? She called her up and said, "How are you doing? What's going on in your life?" And she heard her story and she validated her and she gave her love. And at the end of the conversation, she said, "Give me the information, I'll wire you the money." Right? So
Wow.
it's incredible when you are in conflict with somebody in the real everyday world, how you can, in your mind, actually have a conversation with them and get the backstory of what it is that's creating it, to know how to approach a situation, to influence it for a win-win. And I've done this in business many, many, many times. And
Oh,
it has completely resolved so many situations where somebody is being an absolute nightmare. And what it comes down to is they're dealing with pain for one reason or another. And the only response that they need is love and validation.
I love it. It's so true. It's perfect. It's also a technique that was used. I've used it seldom, but I've used it here and there. Bringing the person, and first of all, to avoid horrible emotions, I'd have them be in a movie theater and viewing this on a screen, so there's not emotions.
Separation.
Exactly. And so let's say they were traumatized or they felt disempowered by a relative at age 4. And so I'd have them now in the present speaking to their 4-year-old self in their
Mm,
mind. You've probably heard of this technique. And I've had a little bit of success with that, a little bit of re-empowerment for the client. But it kind of reminded me of that, where they're bringing into their subconscious mind or their field of vision subconsciously themselves with themselves and actually hugging themselves in the end and all this neat stuff. So, but I personally prefer using it in the manner and the way that you were just outlining for business, a little bit more practical. And people also see right away. They see right away some modicum of success and progress and re-empowerment and strength and happiness. I also, maybe we'll touch on this. I have a feeling we're going to do more than one session here. Um, and I'm thankful for your time, by the way. I hope you know that,
of
Harmony.
course.
Um,
Absolutely.
what we call mind treatments, what I call mind treatments, and that's based. I don't know if you've ever heard of Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, P.P. Quimby. He's considered the father of New Thought metaphysics, along with Emerson. And it's essentially very similar to NLP, where you're substituting one thing for another. One emotion or one situation is substituted for another emotion and situation, but it's very, very powerful. And rather than my goal was to not have clients see me for 20 years, which doesn't make me a rich person financially, my goal was to help themselves in as few sessions as possible.
Yeah.
And the mind treatment would fix, if you will, everything within an hour, pretty much an hour. And we'd be seated like this, face to face, not knees touching necessarily, and a little pillow between us, kind of like as a buffer. And I get them with their eyes open. And this kind of harkens back to what you said earlier. They're not going into like a major trance, they're in somewhat altered states. And we work that way. And each person is individual, each person is different. But
Yes.
and their belief systems would be different as well. But whatever their strongest faith and belief system would be substituted in for whatever traumatized them or whatever.
Yeah.
And their whole countenance, their whole posture, their whole expression would change and their vibration, their energy as well. Wow. And so I felt very good about that. It's called the mind treatments, but it's something one really has to research hand in hand with New Thought metaphysics and all. But it's not unlike other therapies that Freud and Jung used. They called it mesmerism or hypnosis, but it's also suggestibility, and it's also kind of re-empowering oneself, being one with their true self. I like to say true with a capital T. Anyway, I've blabbered on enough. I want to go on about your upcoming book. I don't know if you've got a title for it, but please share how people might get a hold of it as soon as it comes out, or even before.
What you just talked about, I just want to touch base on that for a second, because I think the thing that's really important to understand is that there are so many different ways and methods that you can gain resolution, right?